My guest today is a genius in the world of machine vision systems, that is, computers that can see, and artificial intelligence. He's one of America's leading moral philanthropists as well. He's a hard-working, life-loving man who races cars to relax. He's the founder and chairman emeritus of Cognex Corporation. His name is Dr. Bob Shillman. And we will learn more about this most extraordinary man, whom I'm pleased to also call a very dear friend. You are listening to The Jason Hill Show, and I am Jason Hill. And if you're a fan of the show and you wish to make a donation, just click on the link below and follow the instructions. And we'll be right back in a moment. Welcome back to the Jason Hill Show. I am Jason Hill. As I said, my guest today is Dr. Bob Shillman. Dr. Bob, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Jason. Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, you are a great philanthropist. You are an entrepreneur. You're a businessman. But I don't think Americans know of you the way they know of, let's say, Bill Gates or Elon Musk, although you're much, in my estimation, much smarter than they are. So why don't you give me and give our listeners a summary of your background?
Sure, and I can't state whether I'm smarter, but I'm not as rich as they are, so there is something there that I can state. I started off in high school like everybody, junior high, high school, whatever, and did very poorly in everything but math. And that math was what saved me. I did very well in math and physics and chemistry, and that got me into Northeastern University, which at that time was really a blue collar working class school that had very low standards, thank God, and that's how I got in. Their entry standards were low, but staying there was difficult. You had to do well to stay there. It has now since changed. It's a very much sought after university in downtown in Boston, and when I speak to the president and the staff, I tell them that they should still keep allowing people to come who don't have great grades, because I'm a perfect example of what can happen. I graduated at the top of my class in electrical engineering, and then went for graduate studies to MIT, where I got my master's and PhD in the field of artificial intelligence, which was brand new at that time. That's sort of in the late in the 70s. Graduated with that degree, and decided that I would start a company. I'm a rather independent soul, and I find it difficult to work under other people's rules. So I started a company. It's called Cognex, Cognex Corporation. It's a public company on the Nasdaq, very successful, good size, about $1 billion in revenue. And the goal was to build a machine, a computer system, consisting of a camera and software and hardware that would read numbers and letters on things, for example, like barcode reading. It took a number of years, but 40 years later, we are now the premier. Cognex is now the premier company for machine vision. That's eyes of robots on the factory floor. They're used in guiding the manufacture of everything you buy, except clothing. Clothing is still pretty much a manual labor thing, but everything from making chocolate chip cookies, which are made in a factory, not really a bakery, it's a factory, to computer chips, requires the accuracy and intelligence of Cognex Vision Systems. I ran that company for about 40 years, and about a year or so decided to retire and spend my time now in my wealth, which thank God that I was born in America, that gave me the opportunity as a poor individual with poor grades to become a rather successful individual. And now my PhD doesn't stand for Doctor of Philosophy, it stands for Doctor of Philanthropy. So most people know me as Dr. Bob. And that's because I don't like Dr. Shillman. It's sort of too formal, and I don't like to be called sir because that makes me feel too old. It's what people would call my father, sir, but not me. So I'm Dr. Bob, and now I spend much of my time and much of my money supporting organizations, charitable organizations, primarily in the United States.
What are the general themes of your philanthropy?
There are three basic areas that I invest in, and I call it investing. You know, a lot of people use the term giving back. I abhor that term. Giving back implies that you took. You took somebody's cap and or hat, and then you gave it back. You took somebody's money and you gave. No, I didn't take anything, and most successful people didn't take from the society, they gave to the society. So I don't consider philanthropy as giving back. I consider it as giving or investing. And the three areas that I most focus on are, first of all, our Constitution, the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom. Freedom. I want America to be the same country that it was when I grew up, and that allowed me to be successful. Freedom to fail, freedom to try things without asking. You save money or you raise money, and you try this, you try that. There are very few permissions you have to ask in this country, as opposed to most countries in the world where you have trouble crossing the street without asking permission. So, defending the lifestyle, defending capitalism, which is also the free enterprise system, is one of the three areas. The second area is focusing on Israel, the continued prosperity and safety of the state of Israel is very important to me. Although I didn't grow up during the Holocaust, I know of it. My parents, fortunately, were Americans. They were born in this country, but nevertheless, we see tremendous amount of anti-Israeli thinking and Israeli activities, and that really is anti-Semitism. So defending Israel and defending the Jewish people is very important to me. The third is medicine. As a cancer survivor, and again, I'm so grateful to the American medical system that we have in this country. Those people who complain about medicine in our country just don't have any experience anywhere else. Yes, it has flaws and it's not perfect, but no one leaves America to get medical care in Zimbabwe or Cuba or Venezuela. You could be sure of that. So, in recognition of the importance of medical research, and in appreciation for what the doctors did for me, saved my life essentially from a fatal disease, a fatal kind of cancer for most people. I support cancer research at the University of California, San Diego Medical Center, which is called the Moores Cancer Center. So those are the three areas. There are other areas that I also invest in, but to a lesser degree. Homelessness. There's a homeless shelter in San Diego that I sponsor. There are other and also other smaller groups and causes that are important, but not as important as the three I've just mentioned.
So in my introduction to you, I sort of I called you a moral or an ethical philanthropist, and I would say that there's a moral connection between your philanthropy and your convictions. There is no dichotomy between your benefactions and your moral conscience. So, in one respect, in the best sense of the term, one could call you a moral colonizer in the sense that you use your money to tangibly materialize your values here on earth.
Yes, and yes, thank you. And the values that I support are, and it's not a personal thing. It's not just me. It's all of those individuals who care about freedom of expression, which is being attacked virtually everywhere in America. Most certainly in universities, where if you don't speak the party line, and I say party intentionally, this is a leftist thing, and they call it. Progressive, well, progressive is a term that the communists came up with 30 or 40, 50 years ago because they didn't want the word communism because everybody thought communism is bad. So the communists stopped using that term and they used the term progressives. So whenever you hear the term progressive, you know it's communist propaganda, and I abhor that. I abhor central control of anything, and I think most entrepreneurs would feel the same way. Entrepreneurs are independent thinkers. They are against centralized control. And even though I ran a company until it got rather large, I was a benevolent dictator, I would say. I would always listen to other voices, and most often, half the time, I would say, your idea is better than mine. Let's go with that. So by being open to other people's ideas, you will get a lot of good ideas, and that's how I've always lived my life and treated other people. And I'm very worried about this generation of individuals who have gone through schools recently and are taught what to think, not how to think.
That commitment to individualism and to independent thought has translated itself in your occasional support of unique individuals, hasn't it? And I can say I am the recipient of your benefaction, having had you support my ongoing lawsuit with my own university for my support for Israel, and being the recipient of I'm a Shillman Fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Center, where I receive a generous stipend for writing about cultural and I write on Israel as well, but mostly cultural and political issues dealing with the free market and
Exactly.
yes.
Exactly. Now, the term philanthropist generally means individuals who are helping to benefit organizations or society. Uh, I'm a rather unusual philanthropist. In addition to supporting a little over 80 different organizations, I also occasionally support individuals who are unique in that they are either brave or highly intelligent or driven, but faced difficulties, but are now facing difficulties because of their positions. And I seek these people out. I don't advertise that I help individuals. That would be impossible. There are just too many individuals who would be at my door. But when I read about an individual such as you, that's how it happened. You didn't call me, nobody introduced me to you, or you to me. I read about the trials and tribulations that you faced at DePaul University for merely writing an article that was supportive of Israel. I mean, it could be right, it could be wrong, but that's what universities are about. They're about diversity, or they used to be, they should be about diversity of thought, and you were severely, and you are still severely penalized for taking a position that is not the accepted moral position, evidently. So I reached out to you, and since then I have found two or three other professors who have been vilified for similar kinds of things, not dealing with Israel generally. In the other cases, they were dealing with a black professor at Harvard who had a non woke view of why there's so much poverty in the black community, and a non woke view about funding the police, not defunding the police, and how defunding hurts the community. So, and he was vilified, and I'm in touch with him. And there's another professor at Yale who lost tenure, and then a professor at MIT. So I seek these people out. In some cases, they don't need my assistance. They have other resources, but I'm always willing and able to help the underdog, especially when they have unique talents, as in your case and in the case of the other professors. One professor was a very, very well recognized, and even though young, famous for his cancer research, and now, because of the woke politics, he is unemployed. And this is an individual who other researchers said would be a Nobel Prize winner. All right. And now the entire world will suffer because his research will not get carried on because he didn't toe the woke line. So the horrible things are happening in our country, and I got to do my part.
You have to do your part, but how? And it's and I'm very grateful for everything, of course, that you've done to help me. It's not just the financial help; it's also the psychological, the sense of having an ally out there in the world who's quite powerful and who believes in what I do. That sort of helps me to keep pushing along in my own independence and my own and adding to my fortitude and my resilience. But do you think that there is any hope? I mean, I've been in the professor for 27 years now. Do you think that with the help that you're giving to these individuals, do you think that there is any hope in the universities, or have the universities gone too far? I mean, Dr. Bob, I find myself telling a lot of my male students to drop out of college, especially if they are not entrepreneurial spirit.
Well, there are two issues. One is the one you're mentioning about the woke atmosphere and the mind control that is happening in universities. Get that change. Another thing is that most people don't realize that you can make a very good living without going to college. College, and I'm saying this as a former professor. For most things, college is a scam. The cost of tuition has risen at a higher rate than the cost of medicine, which is out of this world. Okay? Higher rate. I've been told that at Yale, they have many more administrators than they have students. Many more, and that we're not talking about faculty, administrators than they have students. So college is a waste, not only a waste of time, it's a waste of money for most people. Now, clearly, if one wants to become a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer, or there are many fields where you have to have an education. But I will tell you from being a student for many years and from teaching students for many years, many of the courses that you're forced to take are not applicable to what you're doing. Oh, yeah, so at every school, even if you're an engineer, oh, you have to take some liberal arts courses and all these electives. That is bullshit, okay? Bullshit. You know, instead of engineering be a 4-year program, it could be a 2-year program if all you want to know is engineering. The other stuff you will pick up during your life by reading or watching YouTubes or whatever. And so they force you to take all these extra courses to support the cash flow. And by the way, the loans, the loans are not from the university. They pass those on to the government. They have no skin in the game. So they are motivated to get as many students as possible, and because they're going to get the tuition. The tuition's going to come from the government probably, or from those people who can afford it. But there's no reason for them to limit the number of students, even those who can't afford it, because they're going to get paid. In my view, the colleges should be responsible for the loans. All right. And then you'll see those colleges teaching courses where people will be able to earn a living and pay back the loan. You know, you apply for a loan for a home, they have to know that you're going to be able to pay it back. The colleges don't care. They don't care because they get paid right away from the federal government. They don't wait for the money. All right, so it's a scam. And even though, I'm highly educated, I wouldn't say highly smart, but I'm very educated with 3 degrees. I told my children, I have 2 boys, when they were leaving high school, I said, listen, guys, unless you're going to become an XYZ, then don't go to college. I will set aside the same amount of money the tuition cost, and it's probably, $50,000 a year now, so that's 4 years would be 200 grand. I will give you 200 grand to set up a business or to travel the world or to learn something outside of college. Unfortunately, they are pressured by society and their peers or whatever. You're told that if you don't have a college degree, you're worthless. Well, tell that to my plumber, okay? There's an old joke somebody told me. This neurosurgeon, brain surgeon, in lives near L.A. in Beverly Hills, very wealthy. He had a problem with the plumbing in his house. I don't know. It was the water heater. That's the story. Okay, it's a joke. He had a problem with the water heater. Calls the plumber. Plumber was there for an hour, and he charged him $2,000. And the guy said, the surgeon looked at him. He says, that's more per hour than I make. And the plumber turned to him and said, yeah, when I was a surgeon, I felt the same way. Right? So you can make a very good living, especially if you're in the trades. Okay, very good living. And unfortunately, our country doesn't really have schools or they don't incentivize students to think outside the box. Instead of going to college, become an electrician, become an electrical contractor, learn something else. Right? And unfortunately, most people still think that going to college, they're going to earn more money, and it's just not true anymore. Now, it depends on what you major in, of course. I mean, if I didn't major in electrical engineering, computer science, I wouldn't have been able to start my company. It's a different story. So I'm not saying that all college education is valuable. It's college education that's not as valuable as people think. Now, getting on to your point, is there hope? I don't think the existing universities can be fixed because the people in charge are going to stay in charge. Or when they retire, they're going to replace themselves with clones. It can't be fixed. Can't be fixed. The hope is there'll be new universities. I think there's one in Texas starting. I forget it's called. It's either called the University
Of
of
Austin,
Austin,
of
University
Austin.
of Austin, which is modeled and it's already gotten funding to be a traditional education where you're taught how to think, not what to think. So I think that's the future. Hoping to fix these universities, impossible. Impossible. They're rotten to the core now. Rotten to the core.
They are. We're going to take a short break. I couldn't agree with you more, Dr. Bob. For about 7, 8 years, I've been writing that universities are bastions of left wing indoctrination. I'm a philosopher by training. I'm in the humanities. I know that in literature, in social sciences, in political science and philosophy, it's all left wing Marxist indoctrination that is being advocated in the universities. They should be defunded and shut down. We actually need more plumbers in this country than we need philosophers. And this has been said. This is
That's right, by a philosopher. Yeah, you don't need that many philosophers. Everybody needs a plumber.
Everybody needs a plumber. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue our amazing conversation with Dr. Bob Shillman. This is Jason Hill, and you are listening to The Jason Hill Show. Welcome back to the show. I'm Jason Hill, and this is the Jason Hill Show. Dr. Bob, we have so many things I want to talk to you about. So we got a little bit about, some of the worries that face you, that are facing the country, which are a worry to you. But I want to narrow your thinking down to, the left is destroying this country at an unprecedented rate. I mean, it just gets worse. And I think every 2 weeks or every month, I sort of like last week, I wrote to you and I was going through this sort of political depression. I go through these, they're not necessarily personal, they're existential personal depressions. What do you think, if you had to pin it down to uh, the biggest existential threat facing our country today, what would it be?
I'd say freedom to speak your mind. Because if you can't speak your mind, then you can't communicate what you're thinking or feeling with other people, and you'll be afraid of speaking your mind. You don't know who you're speaking to unless you know that they are aligned with you philosophically or politically or sexually. You're going to be afraid to say anything. And by not speaking, the only voices that will be heard are the woke voices, the leftist, socialist, progressive, communist voices. And we're headed in a terrible direction because of that. People are taught, evidently, the 1619 Project or whatever, that we're inherently racist. Jesus, didn't we have 8 years of a black president and a lot of his appointees were black? Didn't we have that? So, how are we inherently racist? My neighbor next door is a quarterback for a major team, and he just recently signed a contract for $240 million. Now it's 5 years, but nevertheless, that's about 50,000, 50 mil. Did I say? I meant $245 million, a 5 year contract, 245 million. It's about $50 million a year. They pay 13 games, from what I understand. It's $4 million a game. Uh, but it's a racist country. I don't get it. Oprah Winfrey, multi-billionaire. Nobody's ever, criticizing her. They criticize businessmen and CEOs for high salaries, but nobody's as rich as, and very few people are as rich as Oprah Winfrey. Nobody's saying anything about that. So this leftward, this socialist viewpoint is being pushed by people who are either uninformed or evil. Now, uninformed, you should get informed. Go to a country, go somewhere where they have real socialism. I'm not talking about Denmark or Sweden. They are not socialist countries. They'll tell you that. They're not socialist countries. They happen to have a large safety net, but they're not socialist countries. Socialist country is Venezuela, all right? Is Cuba. Communist, social, there's no difference between the two. It's just socialism is a model, is perhaps a modest form of communism, but it ends up the same place. Go to Venezuela. You don't need a special passport to go to Cuba. I think you have to do something special, but go to Venezuela and stay there for 3 weeks, and then come back and tell me about socialism. Okay, all right, tell me about it. Now I have done that. I went to Cuba. I've been there 3 times to understand what communism does to people, what it does to a country. That country has been under the boot heel of communism since I think it was 1960. That's over 60 years ago. 60 years ago, the average salary, it was a few years when I went there a few years ago, but it's about $100 a month. The pharmacies are bare. You can't find a doctor because you know what? Cuba ships the doctors to other countries and gets paid for it. That's how they get some foreign currency. So, it's all free, but there just isn't any of it. All right. So anybody who thinks socialism is good is really stupid or uninformed or evil, and it's probably evil. They just hate the inequality in America. Now, there's inequality in America. Everywhere, wherever you meet, wherever you go, there's inequality. I can't go. I could never try out for a football team, right? There's inequality. There are big, strong men, and then there are weaker men like me. Okay, then there are smarter men. I'll say men and women, and there are less smart men. So there's inequality of ability. And that inequality of ability is genetic, generally genetic, the inequality of ability. You can't make me into a football player by trying harder or eating more. It wouldn't happen. I'm 5'8", and that's what I'm going to be, right? Inequality of ability leads to inequality of outcomes. So some people are better at sports. Some people are better at moderating a TV show. Some people are better in business, and some people are better in technology. That's all there is to it. And by trying as DEI equity, this equity nonsense, saying, well, we're going to make equal outcomes. Well, yeah, you're dealing in fantasy. If you can make everybody who wants to be a doctor, Wants to be isn't the same as has the ability, right? So what's going to happen in America, and it's happening now, they're doing away with objective tests for things. Now, not in sports. You could be sure there are objective tests when you say I want to play basketball. They're going to try you out on basketball. They're going to see how you played in high school or in college, and then they're going to have you at their training camp. Let's see what you can do here. When it comes to sports, there are objective standards. They're not saying, "Oh no, it's equal outcomes." We're going to have just as many short Japanese on the basketball team as are in our population. You'll never see that. You'll never see it equal outcomes or proportional outcomes when it comes to sports. No, that for some reason nobody touches that. But when it comes to other things like becoming an engineer, some colleges are doing away with the SAT tests. SAT tests your knowledge of engineering or math or physics or chemistry. Well, gee, that makes sense. Just like it makes sense if you can throw a ball into a hoop before they'll hire you. But no, we're going to do away with that because of equity. Equity. So what's going to happen? It is going to happen. They are going to have equal outcomes. But that means that when you go to the doctor, that doctor didn't pass the tests that other doctors used to pass. That means a lowering of the quality of the service that doctor's going to provide to you. It means that when you buy a car, it's going to be lower quality because they hired engineers based on equity, not on merit. It means everything that we do in our society will be mediocre instead of superior. All right. You won't be able to see a Steve Jobs anymore or an Elon Musk. That's not going to be allowed to happen anymore. Right. They won't get the next Elon Musk won't get into college. You know why? Because that next Elon Musk who earned a merit scholarship was not told by the high school, the parents were not told by the high school that he won a merit scholarship. And that's going to lower that kid's chance of getting into a good college. And that's just in the news now. How many high schools refused to tell the parents or the students that they were merit scholars, that they were chosen as merit scholars. And why did the teachers do that? It wasn't an oversight. It's because they're fucking leftists, okay? They're leftists. They want equal outcomes, and they don't want merit to count. Because if merit counts, it won't be equal outcome. So that's my biggest worry about our society and about the world, that my children and grandchildren, whatever, the next generation is going to see a decline in the standard of living in America. The decline. Now, everybody talks about the disparity between the ultra wealthy and the poor. Well, the poor in this country live better than the average person in most of the world. Okay? Poverty in America means you have an iPhone 7, not an iPhone 13. Poverty in America doesn't mean you're hungry. You know the biggest medical problem among the poor? Do you know what it is? It's obesity. Do you think that's true in Southern Africa, in Sub-Saharan Africa? Do you think the biggest problem of poverty there is obesity? Starving to death is what's happening in those countries. All right? So yes, there's a large disparity between the wealthy and the poor. But what's more important is how poor are the poor? Are they going hungry? No. You get an EBT card. Now, it used to be that welfare was subsistence living, temporary subsistence living, so you'd get off your ass and get a job. Now, you'd go into a store, and I remember this. If you had food stamps, you couldn't buy pre-prepared food. No, you had to buy the ingredients. You could buy milk and bread, but other than that, you couldn't buy a roasted chicken. Now, with EBT cards, not only can you buy pre-prepared food, you can go into McDonald's. That's not what welfare is all about. That's not what it's about, right? And this is why another problem in America, people don't want to work. Well, there are a lot of people, like I'm different, and the people I know are different. We enjoy work. We get satisfaction from our work. It adds meaning to our day, our week, our life. Work adds meaning. You feel good about what you've accomplished. Even if it's just fixing a leaking refrigerator, which I recently did, I felt good about it. I could have called a contractor, I could have called Box Appliance and had them come down, but I had the time and I feel good about it. I feel good about doing things, right? But not all of the world is like that. A lot of the world doesn't want to work. And now, under this leftist administration, they don't have to. They're getting all sorts of COVID payment, this payment, that payment. And that's why when you go to some restaurants, they're short on help. It's not because there aren't people around, there are plenty of people around. They just don't have to work anymore. So things look pretty bleak in my view, but that doesn't mean I've given up. I'm doing my part to help to help slow this tide that is going out to sea. It's going to leave barren land. I don't think we can reverse the tide, but I'm slowing it down, and that's what I try to do.
When just a follow-up issue here. When I think of the because you spend a lot of time talking about socialism, and when I think about the ethos of the socialist mindset, I have to blame my fellow conservatives in one respect, Dr. Bob, in the sense that the left consists of fighters, savage fighters, and I think of conservatives as being very recalcitrant. In other words, they're not big on promulgating the morality of wealth creation, the morality of the profit motive, the idea that each person is an end in himself, the right to the product of his thinking. Um, and because they're so silent about the morality of the profit motive, the morality of capitalism, that it's
Right,
not just
you're exactly right, Jason. Exactly right. We have two parties in America. We have the evil party and we have the dumb party. All right. Now, I'll take a moment to talk about the beauty and the ethics of capitalism. You see, leftists are taught and teach that capitalism is evil. People make all this money, and it's not fair. They're abusing their workers. They're taking advantage of other people. You know, Look, I agree that having $1 billion or more dollars, you can't live any better than somebody with 100 million. So that doesn't mean you should take it away. But let me talk about profit and capitalism. What is profit? Profit is something you get when you've done something. Whether as a kid I mowed lawns, I put in my effort and delivered a service. I shoveled snow in the depths of New England winter, and I ended up in the hospital once because of that. So I shoveled snow, cleaned driveways so people could get their car out. And what happened? I gave to society. I gave effort and results. And what did I get back? I got pieces of paper or ones and zero, little pieces of paper, right? So I love capitalism because it measures things in a certain way based on what you deliver. I negotiated, even though a kid, I'd walk up and I'd measure the driveway and I'd say, this is going to cost $35. And maybe they wanted to pay 25 and we agreed on 30. But I delivered a service. And in exchange for that, I got ones and zeros. We want people to deliver services and products. That's what we want, because then everybody will be served and everybody will have low price products. Yeah, that's what we want. And it's a fair exchange. You don't put a gun to a guy's head when you're going to shovel his driveway. He has the dollars. I have the shovel, right? And I have the energy. So a fair exchange happens. So the ones and zeros that businessmen or capitalists make or working men make is a representation not of what they took from society, it's a representation of what they gave to society. That's what the ones and zeros represent. that did good. They were useful. They delivered a goods or services that they got paid for. Now, our income tax system is a horrible system. Now, we need taxes. I understand that. We got to pay for the roads, for the airplanes, for the defense, for the water. Got to have taxes. We know that. There's no country that doesn't have taxes. No way of doing it without taxes. But an income tax taxes you for your income. And as I've just made clear, income is a representation of what you gave to society. You don't want to put a disincentive on people giving to society. You want them to give as much as possible, which means you want them to make as much money as possible. So then where do we get the taxes? Well, that's simple. You get the taxes from the people who consume from society, who take. When you buy a car, you're taking it for your personal use. You should pay a tax on that, whether it's a value added tax or a sales tax. That is the right kind of tax. Rather than taxing people for giving to society, you tax them for taking from society. So the more people make, I'm of course limiting this to legal tender, to people who legally make money. I'm not talking about drug traffickers. Okay, the people who make the most money have done the most for society. You look at Elon Musk. People say, "Whoa, what is he going to do with $200 billion?" That's none of your business what he's going to do with it. Whatever he's worth on paper, and it's only paper, is what the world has said, what the investors have said that he's done. We're so grateful for the products he's developed. We're going to pay a lot of money and his stock is going to go up. He didn't set that value of 100 or whatever $billion. He didn't set that value. The people who invested in Tesla and who buy Teslas set that value. Why would you want it? This Elizabeth Warren wants to tax billionaires, right? Wants to take more of their money. They haven't earned it. Who's she to say? What has she ever done for society? That bitch. What has she ever done? That faker who got into a faculty position at Harvard, either a faculty position or was accepted there by lying on her resume, saying that she was of American Indian extraction. What has she done for society to make it better?
In one sense, Dr. Bob, whether it's Jeff Bezos or yourself as the founder of Cognex, or Elon Musk, we as free consumers, we as free individuals, we ratify, right?
Right.
What they're doing is spitting on the choices that we've made. We've ratified the certain actions that we've made.
The people who make a lot, Oprah Winfrey. Now, I have no idea why she is that valuable. I mean, I don't think I just don't understand, but it doesn't matter. There are people who think that she's great and they buy her books and and she does commercials or she has a TV show. It's okay. It's not my money. I don't watch the show, but people do, and let her make the money. That's fine. She didn't print it up. Elon Musk didn't print it up. Jeff Bezos didn't print it up. It's disgusting. Socialism, communism, leftism is a cancer to every society where it's ever been tried, and it's never been successful. Winston Churchill is a famous quote who said it best. Capitalism is about the unequal distribution of money, and socialism is about the equal distribution of failure and mediocrity. That's what socialism is. Equal distribution of despair. Nobody feels good. You go to these countries and you'll experience that. You'll experience that.
Well, I lived under it as a child for a while, from I was 12 till I was for about 4 years under Michael Manley. We're going to take a very short break, and then we'll come back. We'll get into some more personal issues with you, Dr. Bob. This is the Jason Hill Show, and we're talking to Dr. Bob Shillman. Back in a moment. Welcome back to the show. I am Jason Hill, and this is the Jason Hill Show. And remember, if you're a fan of the show and you want to make a donation, just click on the link below and follow the instructions. Dr. Bob, this is a terribly exciting conversation that we're having. We could go on forever. What has been the biggest existential crisis that you faced in your life, and how did you pull through it?
Well, there's just one. I have been very fortunate. I had two great parents, a mother and a father, who taught me not by sitting me down and teaching me, but taught me by example how to live an honest, ethical life. I saw that by example. I learned about hard work, seeing my father go to work 6 days a week, and even on the seventh day, he had to prepare for the Monday. So I've been extremely fortunate in life. I met the right people, and I don't know how that happened. I didn't play a role in it. And a lot of success is chance. A lot of life is chance. I met this wonderful woman and a Chinese lady from Shanghai, and I met her in Japan, and that was by chance. And we have a lovely family, a lovely home life. But there are curveballs in everybody's life, or problems, pitfalls, and mine happen to be health. I About 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer that is treatable and actually curable in young people, but not in older people, because the chemotherapy that works in young people uh, is too powerful and kills older people. So it's generally not given because the chemotherapy kills them instead of the cancer. Well, fortunately, I was in good enough shape. Again, not because I work out, because I don't, but I was just in good enough shape, good DNA, I suppose, that the doctors decided that this was the best hope. Either kill them with a chemotherapy, or we'll kill cancer and it won't kill them. And that's what happened. I was got very ill under the chemotherapy, had to be hospitalized 3 times in the emergency room and staying over for days to be treated with antibiotics for the infections that I got. But I survived. So I think that was the biggest challenge I faced, and my family and friends helped me through that. I think it would be difficult when you're critically ill to get over that without support. Not just the doctors. Of course, the doctors saved my life, but you know what? I probably would have given up. The chemotherapy was very harsh, very difficult. And it was months worth of chemotherapy, not one day. It was 2 hospitalizations every month for 4 or 5 months, and extremely debilitating, extremely debilitating. So my family pulled me through, and my good friends. So that's it. That's my story of hardship, and it's not bad. One kind of serious hardship in life isn't too bad. Other than that, it's been a pleasure. But now the what keeps me up night and what wakes me up in a sweat in the morning is the future of this country. I really worry about the future of this country and our place in the world. We are withdrawing from the world stage, and I think it started with President Obama. Not I think, I'm sure it started with President Obama, who did a worldwide apology tour, if you remember. A worldwide apologizing to the world. We saved the world. No, we weren't the only ones in World War One, World War Two, especially World War Two. We came in late. But if not for America, we would all be speaking German right now, okay, and marching in unison, or be dead. As a Jew, I'd be dead. So America had nothing to apologize for, nothing to apologize for. All the breakthroughs in medicine and science and technology and space, they're American. Now, I'm not saying that the Japanese haven't contributed, or the Russians or the Chinese. Of course, every country contributes to some degree, but the major breakthroughs in every single field come from Americans. And those breakthroughs are not due to the government saying, let's have a breakthrough. The breakthrough in space travel. It didn't come from NASA. Yes, we landed on the moon, no question. I'm not taking anything away from that. But the breakthrough of returning rockets to Earth and using them again, that's private enterprise. That's Elon Musk. That's SpaceX. That never would have happened. An administrator would never think of that kind of thing. And if an engineer in NASA thought about it, nobody would pay attention to him. You see this rocket; it's incredible that a rocket that just launched satellites or a space station into Earth, into the stratosphere, then comes back like it's like a pencil coming down straight down and landing on the eraser. I saw that. I was amazed, equally amazing. Self-driving cars. And I'm not a novice in machine intelligence, but I predicted 5 years ago it would never happen. Well, my son has a Tesla and recently got the full self-driving software. And I got to tell you, I was wrong. It happens. It happens today. And it didn't happen because the government mandated that we have to have self-driving cars. It came about because of freedom of a man like Elon Musk who had the idea and convinced people to invest in his company, and he made it happen. He made it happen. Now, not everything that he's saying is going to come true. I don't think this Neuralink is going to work out, but you know what? I didn't think self-driving was going to work out. So, I don't have a good track record on this. But it comes about, the breakthroughs come about from freedom of individuals. We have 325 million individuals in this country, and each person should be free to think what they want, to speak what they want, and do what they want to the extent it doesn't harm someone else. But when you have government saying that you have to do it this way, you have government that's saying COVID is treated only one way. Don't you dare speak about hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin, and we'll take away your license. That is a new law now in California, that a doctor is not allowed to differ from what is considered the standard. Can you imagine that? Who decides what the standard is? Who decides? So that is going to be litigated in court because it violates the doctor's freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and it violates his oath, his Hippocratic oath, and a variety of other constitutional issues. That the doctor can't prescribe or tell you anything that's contrary to what the standard method is. Sure. This is what happens when government gets in control. They get more and more in control. They don't give it up. You don't see government giving up power. You don't see rules being thrown out or laws being unenacted. We have a system that is based on people getting elected to pass laws. Well, you know what? We have enough fucking laws. If engineers went into government, you wouldn't have this. You might have, more inventions, but you wouldn't have more laws. How many laws do we need?
Well, I wonder to what extent the democratic process itself, as it's been traditionally known, is contributing to this phenomenon. And I say this against the backdrop of looking at Hungary, where you sort of have a strongman who has established what he has called an illiberal democracy. Talk a little bit about that, because I'm fascinated with what's going on in Hungary.
Well, another quote from Winston Churchill: democracy is the worst possible system except for all the rest. All right? It is a true democracy, and I don't think we have a true democracy here, which is a good thing. So a democracy is where the votes count, and whoever all the votes are equal, and whatever the majority wants. Well, that would lead to the persecution of the minority. Okay, democracy is a bad thing. Voting, the way we count votes, forget about if there's fraud. I'm not going to get into that. the fact that each person's vote counts the same is ridiculous. Ridiculous. I ran a public company. We have many shareholders. They don't all each have one vote. They have one vote for every share that they own, for their skin in the game. If you own, 10 shares, well, you get 10 votes, but the guy who owns 1,000 shares gets more votes. It should be the Dr. Bob method of fixing this system is that everybody should have one vote, but in addition, here's an idea: an extra vote for every $1,000 of taxes you paid. If you're paying more into the government, you should have more say. You should have more say. Now, I'm not saying that maybe it's not one for every 1,000, maybe it's every $2,000 of tax you pay, you get an extra vote. But there should be a method so that reflects what people pay into the system should have more say. Now, another method, if you don't like it based on capitalism or economics, base it on knowledge. We could have um, a multiple choice test prior to your vote, or at the same time, right before the vote. Simple questions about what each candidate stands for. Right? Uh, you should know that because you're going to vote. You should know what they stand for. And if you so whatever your score is on that test, it gets multiplied by one vote. So if your score is 80%, that your vote is only 0.8. And if you got everything right, your vote counts as one. If you get nothing right, your vote doesn't count. And that's the way it should be. If you don't know the positions of these candidates, your vote shouldn't count. Right? So I think, look, we could change. It could be changed. I'm not saying it's ever going to happen, but we've changed it over time. Of course, when the country was first established or became a sizable country, only white landowners, male, could vote. Right? That's what it was. You had to be a man, you had to be white, and you had to own land in order to vote. Right? Now, obviously, that's discriminatory on many bases. And we changed it over time. Well, we could change it again. We could change it again. But you know what? It's never going to change because the people who are ignorant of the issues or just downright stupid are not going to vote for the change. They're not going to vote for it because it makes it harder for them to vote. It makes it more. It used to be, we in the South, they used to have a literacy test. You had to be able to read. Now, I'm sure it was used to discriminate against poor blacks or poor whites even. So we got rid of the literacy test. I think that's a mistake. I think I think you have to be able to read to vote. I mean, if you can't read, how do you read street signs? How do you know what the laws are? How do you know what the rules are? So we have to get back to a system. It'll never happen. Okay, it's never going to happen, where a vote means something, where people value their vote.
Well, I've been thinking about this issue, which is why, and I think we think alike because I think what has happened is everyone gets led into the future. Not everyone can get led into the future. The principle here is a sort of radical egalitarianism in the worst sense of the world, where you have a sort of massive over democratization of every phenomena, every sphere of life, and then the lowest common denominator is what gets appealed to, and then you have the rule by mediocrity. And this is why I asked you that question because I wanted our listeners to hear.
It's a rule by mediocrity, and people, this could be, if we had a big enough megaphone, if we had the media on our side, we would tell this story. We would tell the story. Yes, I know you're below, you're not making $1 billion a year, but look what you have compared to other countries. Don't look at how much poorer you are than Elon Musk. Look at your own life. What is wrong with your own life? Are you eating 3 meals a day? Are you safe at home? Do you get medical care? Do you get Social Security? Well, look at the rest of the world. Don't compare yourself to Elon Musk and say, let's take his money, which he doesn't have. It's paper, right? So, but we don't have that. What we have is a media that is telling people that they are being deprived, that they're being taken advantage of, that their life is worthless, that everywhere they look, people hate them. That's what we're being taught. And it's intentional. It's to divide the country. That's what it's about, to make people so unhappy that then the communists will come in and say, okay, we're going to do this temporarily. We're putting the Constitution on hold, just like they said that lockdown is 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and then it was 2 years and more. You still see people wearing masks, and it's still required in medical facilities in California. The crisis is still in effect in California. Okay, the emergency order, I think it's still in effect till March of this year, that the governor says, oh, it's still an emergency. Now, emergencies usually last 10 minutes or an hour or a day or a week. Emergencies don't last 3 years. So we have put in place people who take power where it was never given to them. We voted to be governed. We didn't vote to be ruled. That's a different story. I was in a hardware store during the peak of the pandemic, and I refused to wear a mask. I've read enough about it. The masks don't help you, and I'm not going to be like a sheep. I'm not doing what people tell me, even if it doesn't make sense. Right. So I was in this hardware store, standing in line, waiting to check out, and I was respectful. I stayed 6 feet away from the person in front of me, and so the person in front of me was at the register, and then he turned around and he noticed he wore a mask. He noticed I didn't have a mask on, and he said, "Hey, you got to wear a mask. Put a mask on." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "It's an order." I said, "I'm not in the military. I don't follow orders. I follow rules and laws, not an order." All of a sudden, what never happened in my life before, all these executive order from the president, executive order from the governor. Who gave them the right to pass? We have a system of checks and balances. When something becomes a law, it went through a lot of thought, a lot of discussion. I may not agree with it, but it goes through a process to become law. Ideas or suggestions have to go through a detailed process, very time consuming process to become a law. So you obey the laws because, all right, I don't agree with it, but I went through the process and they seem to think it was right. But an order, what process does that go through? When the governor can say, I order all non-important businesses, what was the term? Not essential businesses to be closed. Well, if a business isn't essential, how come it's in business? Right? Yeah. So the businesses that could stay open for some reason, liquor stores, abortion clinics, drug dispensaries. I'm talking about marijuana dispensaries, and Costco could stay open, but a church that can't stay open. No, you can't go there. That's not essential, right? Or a fish market, maybe not. You can't stay open. Or a shoe store, no, you can't stay open. So we are heading into a society where arbitrary orders and rules will be imposed on people without any debate. Without debate. In California for a long during you couldn't go on the beach. You couldn't go to the beach. Okay? you know, the beaches are not crowded here. Even on a beautiful sunny day, they're not crowded here. Yeah, beaches are beaches, plenty of fresh air. People were arrested. I remember seeing it on TV. Arrests were made. The police were called to arrest people who were on the beach, whether or not they had a mask on the beach. So the next step, it goes incrementally. It's happening fast now, but it goes little steps like that. You can't be on the beach. Pretty soon you can't wear these kind of clothes. Pretty soon you can't debate. You can't have a demonstration. Sure, you can riot. You can be BLM and burning the city down. That's okay. But you can't oppose the mask mandate. We'll arrest you.
Yeah, no objective criteria to ratify the choices that we make to cultivate a good life for ourselves at all, right? Just no objective criteria, just arbitrary whim, caprices, and edicts, and
Right. By the
yeah,
powerful. Yep.
yeah.
It's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse.
I have a few more questions before we close that I wanted to ask you. What is the, I know that you're a man of very, very strong convictions and a good appraiser of character. What is the, what do you despise most of all in a person?
Oh, that's good. Yeah. Well, lack of gratitude is something that really irks me. If they're not grateful for the fact that they live in this country, if they speak down on this country in foolish ways, I look, I am always into doing things better. Matter of fact, when I was in business, I always asked my customers, not what did we do right. I said, what could we do better? Well, what's wrong? What did you find, difficult? And they tell me maybe your payment terms or your delivery. They tell me something. No, but there are so many people who just are angry about this country for some odd reason, and that's what worries me most. They're just not grateful for the freedom that we have in this country, and maybe these people are evil people. They're not just stupid. I think they hate freedom. There are a lot of people who want to be told what to do. They want to be told what to do, right? And they want to tell you what to do, right? They don't like freedom, and they don't belong in this country. That's my view. If daydreaming, I daydream and would wish that the country could be divided into two pieces. If you have these beliefs, get over here, and if you have these beliefs, get over here. And basically, that's what's happening. People are moving to blue states or red states. That's what's going to happen. Unfortunately, the federal government is still going to be blue. That's the real problem. Even though the states have most rights, most of the rights are given to the states, not for the federal government. The federal government every day will take over more of that. That's what's going to try. That's what's going to happen, I think. But we are at such a divide in this country. There's no room for compromise. It's sort of the same as pro-abortion versus pro-life. There's no middle ground. There's no middle ground, right? The pro-abortion people want to be able to abort a baby 2 minutes before it would have been born at 9 months, and the pro-life people say, "I don't care if you've been raped, you can't get an abortion." There's no middle ground on that. So our country is turning into a place where people are either red or blue, and they're not going to be able to get along. They can't get along. So that's what bothers me most is this polarization that is increasing because of the media and because of the constant brainwashing that is happening through our media. That's what's the biggest problem. And those are the people that I want nothing to do with. Nothing to do with those people.
Well, I've got one final question for you. There are, I've been in the classroom now for 27 years, trying um, to do my part to not just get people to think, but to get into to think in a particular kind of way, to give them a method of cognition of using their minds rationally, and to teach them to live sovereign and rational and autonomous lives, to equip them to be sovereign, rational people in the world. And I find, Dr. Bob, that there are just a lot of people who are caught up in this sort of nihilistic culture, um, and they're lost. They're lost, and they're the good ones. They're the ones who are the legatees of a pernicious culture that they didn't create. And what would you say to those students who are sort of not paying unconscionable or conscionable lip service to the norms and the mores that enslave them, not the ones who are the woke part of the woke team, but the ones who just find themselves utterly bereft and are young people who want to belong, who don't yet really have the sort of cast of mind that could sort of create a vision for themselves. but are afraid of social ostracism, are just lost. What do you say to those people?
Well, I think leftists felt this way before 1960s, right? I think that we are the new radicals. And I learned that from Charlie Kirk from Turning Point USA. He talked to his audiences, you are now the radicals. We are the fringe element with the strange way of thinking. And just like the left was able to take over our institutions starting in the 50s and 60s, perhaps we can do the same thing. We have to view ourselves as radicals, and we have to join together. Find those colleagues who think the way you do, and start planning on what we should do next to take back this country. And hopefully it's not through violent revolution, although the right has all the guns. The left doesn't believe in guns, except those politicians who want bodyguards all the time. um, hopefully it's not through violence, but through some other means of taking back this country um, before it's too late.
Well, Dr. Bob, I want to thank you for being on my show. I want to thank you for being a force of nature, but more than that, um, in a world in which many of us are politically depressed, I want to thank you so much for being an agent of good in our world, a beacon of light, and something that many of us can pin our aspirational identities on when we think of Dr. Bob Shillman. And I mean that very, very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason. And again, thank you for giving me a microphone for about an hour to inform your listeners of the hope that is there. There are many people who believe in America. If you look at the polling data, half the people, which is a lot of people, 150 million people or so, still believe in America. So we are not a small minority, but the hope is that we will fight back. We have to learn. Conservatives have to learn how to fight.
Jason Hill Show is a project of the David Horowitz Freedom Center and Front Page Magazine. Unauthorized reproduction of this podcast without express written consent is prohibited.